Welcome to Leadership Reimagined. I'm your host, Cassie Crosby. My guest today is Travis Cook, Director of Industry Solutions at Connection. Travis is also my brother, so I've had a front row seat to his journey from sales rep to innovation leader. Travis is now responsible for AI partnerships and sales enablement across industries, working in ambiguity and building solutions when there's no clear path forward. This conversation is for anyone asking, how do I keep moving when the answers aren't yet clear? Welcome, Trav. I'm excited for the conversation.
Thanks, Cass.
Yeah, it's new for me to have my brother on, but I think it's appropriate.
I was excited when you reached out and wanted to have this conversation. We've had so many conversations outside of work and I always enjoy talking with you. So,
Let's start with how you got here. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you get to be the Director of Industry Solutions?
yeah, so you want the long version or the short, the short bridge version? I started working when I was pretty young, about 12 years old, stocking shelves in our uncle's convenience store.
In
Yeah,
between bullying me?
exactly. Restaurants, moving companies, landscaping. I got a lot of experience from a pretty early age working. As I went to college and was trying to figure out my next steps, I landed at Connection not too long after. I had a couple of stints before Connection. Really have spent most of my career here at Connection. I started in a sales role in one of our New Hampshire offices here. So spent about 5 years in sales, was promoted to sales leadership. For a number of years, I led a healthcare focused inside sales team. I later went to work for one of my early mentors in a business operations manager position where I had a lot of operational responsibility. I was trying to help her in the work she was doing around our vertical markets. That led me to a role where I'm leading our industry solutions group, our healthcare, retail, and manufacturing practice, which is a significant portion of Connection's overall business. Connection's a national solutions provider, about $3 billion in annual sales. We do business across the country with small, medium business, enterprise sized customers, plus state and local education and government. So we cover a pretty broad swath of customers, about 35,000 nationwide. And we sell a diverse range of products, everything from hardware to software to professional services.
Incredible how big that company has gotten. I know it's been around for a long time in New Hampshire, and it's just grown so significantly. Hearing your story, I think you're what most people would consider a legacy employee, being at a company your whole career. As I hear about your journey, continuing to grow in your company and moving into these spaces, leading at the forefront of change, what has kept you growing in this company over 25 plus years?
When I started, I anticipated, probably like a lot of people do that are pretty fresh out of school, that this was going to be a kind of a waypoint, a
Mhm.
stopping point along the way. I figured 2 or 3 years. And then at that time, this was early 2000s. So many of my peers are just moving around, right? A year, 2 years at a company and then moving to another organization. I thought my journey would be the same. People have asked me this question a lot over the years is, why have you stayed so long? Because now I'm got a really tenured employee base here at Connection,
Yeah.
700 employees nationwide, and average tenure is close to double digits, believe it or not.
Wow.
People have asked me, why have you stayed? I think the number one thing is the culture of the company, the quality of the people I've worked with over the years, just tremendous people. I've had opportunities that I capitalized on to just do really interesting work. Whether that was, moving into a sales manager position and progressing there, or taking on healthcare responsibility, which is one of our largest vertical markets, or, moving into operations later. The work that I'm doing today around our Connection Helix Center for Applied AI and Robotics, which is really at the forefront of change and change management for the company and really on the leading edge.
You mentioned something I think that is so important, which is capitalizing on opportunities when they arise. I think that's such a big part of what allowed people to grow. But what do you think gets in people's way? Why do people sometimes hesitate to take those opportunities?
That's a really interesting question. I've often thought, when thinking of my own journey and seeing those around me, is that I think we get in our own way. Most, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things about the human experience. Oftentimes, it's the story that we have in our head about ourselves, about our worth, about what we can do, what we're good at. That informs how we move through our careers.
Yeah.
The better you can manage that inner monologue, what that story is, the more you can imagine possibilities for yourself, the more you listen to feedback from people around you that are telling you who you really are, right? And what your
Yeah.
value is to the organization, then the better you are. But that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I know you talk a lot about this, but I think many of us, most of us experience a lot of self-doubt in our
Yeah.
career. A lot of that is sort of the quiet suffering, right? In leadership roles, we don't talk about those things, but we all struggle with that to some degree. And to varying levels, careers are like life. There's ups and downs along the way. Somebody told me early on, keep an even keel. Don't ride too high when things are going well. Don't sink too low when things are going badly. That was really advice when I was in sales. And I've come back to that a lot in my career,
Yeah.
reminding myself to do just that, to keep an even keel.
What would you say is the biggest challenge that you face today? And how are you thinking about that challenge?
The biggest challenge, I think, is one that we all share, the pace of change. I worked in technology for 25 years, and it's always been a fast moving industry. New equipment makes and models, new software versions come out continually, customer challenges arise, markets change, disruptors emerge, right? And it's
Mhm.
like since ChatGPT was released, which was, late 2022, that's really kicked off this whole generative AI explosion. Board level and executive level conversations within almost every company, employees wondering what it is that they're going to do, what their right path is for the future. Everyone's wrestling with the pace of change and how quickly artificial intelligence is changing things.
Yeah.
And Connection's no different, except for the fact that in the industry we're in, we need to help our customers sort through this.
Yeah.
And not only do we need to change our internal processes and adopt artificial intelligence to make sure that we're well positioned for the future,
Hmm.
we need to help our customers on their journeys. And there's a whole spectrum of
Yeah.
where those customers are along that journey.
Yeah. And I suppose there's some pressure to feel like you have it all figured out. But the reality is that in many cases, the answers just aren't clear.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. Most of our customers don't have it all figured out yet. We
Yeah.
have made over the past couple of years since we officially launched the practice, we've made significant investments in personnel, in programs. We've worked with hundreds of customers now around artificial intelligence projects, looking at what are the business challenges that they have, which lead to the use cases for. And not everything can be solved by AI, right? And it's not an answer
Totally.
to everything. Helping customers figure out what their next steps should be, how they can mitigate risk, how they think about things like governance, compliance, and ethical AI, which is probably one of the biggest topics
Yeah.
around. It's
Absolutely.
still a little bit of the Wild West. So our customers
Yes.
really need that guidance.
Yeah. And I mean, what's most interesting to me is it just seems like even the people who are working most closely with the technology really don't have clear answers on how or why it works or what the future looks like. One of the things I wanted to ask you, just your opinion, I see a lot of different discussions about AI and its full potential and whether the bubble is about to burst. What are your thoughts on the potential in AI? How close are we?
Um, Depending on it's kind of a case of haves and have nots
Mm.
today,
Hmm.
where those companies that are the most resource rich in terms of talent, dollars, data,
Yeah.
right, have made the most promise. I think most people agree that there's just a tremendous promise with AI. It's going to solve some of our biggest challenges. It's going to make us more
Yeah.
efficient. It's going to create new markets. And it's also extraordinarily disruptive. And we're already seeing some of that in the news with some of the announcements we're seeing about reductions in force at various
Mm.
companies and AI being
Yeah. Entry
a
level positions.
contributor to that. And even now we're seeing some positions that are that are higher level type of role. So it's very disruptive, and everyone's trying to wrestle with all of that. To answer your question, the potential is enormous, and there's a lot that remains to be figured out. We've been in a hype cycle, and we've compared that hype cycle to cloud and what cloud was years ago, or people compare it to the industrial revolution, or
Yeah.
cars replacing horses and buggies. The truth is that this is bigger than any of that, and there's still a fair amount of hype around certain solutions, and then there's some that we're guiding customers around that are very clear cut use cases with clear ROI
Yeah.
that customers are already realizing value. So it'll get better. The challenges will continue to grow as well, but isn't life like that?
Yeah, it is. What I hear you saying is that there's a need to hold on to the enormous potential that exists and have faith in that potential, and then also accept that we don't have the answers. And we may never fully have the answers until the reality is there, right? Because it's hard to know. So I'm curious, what is it like to show up every day to work and lead when there are no clear answers in front of you and you don't know what the future looks like?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by an incredible team of people who are very self motivated, very experienced,
Mm,
very entrepreneurial, right? So there's that entrepreneurial spirit here within Connection. And
yeah.
Helix Center for Applied AI and Robotics is very much like working at a startup within a larger Fortune 1000 organization.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's very difficult, right? To not have all the answers, to be at the forefront of change, to be leading all of that, and working with a team to lead all of that. And it's made very manageable by having a great team that everyone's got
Yeah.
each other's back. And I know I've led lots of teams over the years, ranges of experience, right? Some were teams that were very, very junior, entry
Yep.
level sales, hybrid teams with some very, very experienced salespeople, and then in recent years, I've worked with a team comprised, subject matter experts, some people that were
Yeah.
very experienced around their respective disciplines, all of which are very, very motivated, passionate about what they do. I think that makes it possible. When you're trying to do difficult things, you have to have a good team, and you have to create conditions for that team, right? You have to create the
Yeah.
conditions to allow that team to flourish.
Yeah, that's great insight. And so, with all that, how do you know that you're moving in the right direction? You got your great team, got your mission. How do you know when you're hitting the right points and moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's about having a clear mission, identifying milestones. You've got to have measurements.
Hmm.
I would say you've got to have some patience. You got to have a bias towards action and act in a way that isn't complacent. You have to have some patience in what we're trying to do and the work that we're doing with our customers. It's a heavy lift,
Yeah.
right? This market is changing and evolving. I think you have to really identify what are the metrics that are most important. How are you
Yeah.
going to measure? And those can change over time, right? I think oftentimes when you're doing something new, some of those early steps are a little squishy,
Yeah.
right? And then at the end of the day, as part of a sales organization, it's about results. Are we serving our customers in the way that they
Yep.
need to be served? And
Hitting the numbers. Yeah. And having a bias toward action and being patient, in my experience, is almost like polarities, right? And you have
yes,
to find that, I almost had a visual as you were talking about it, like you're on that teeter totter, right? Like sort of pushing people forward while also knowing when to pull back and not getting too far out over your skis.
I want to talk about patience, right? It's this idea that it's not doing anything meaningful. Generally speaking, it's been my experience, it's harder than you think it's going. When I
Yeah.
hear repeated by entrepreneurs and various people, right, that it takes more effort than you think it's going to take when you start out. If you knew how hard it was going to be, maybe you wouldn't do it. But that's what I mean by
Yeah.
patience. Understand that, you may have to apply more effort for a longer period of time to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's going to require you to perform at a pretty high level, to consistently apply effort. I think that's something that people can struggle with, is sort of the inconsistency in their effort. You have to continue pushing. And the more consistent you can be, the easier you make it for yourself.
Yeah. I suppose there's something about like with risk management or the understanding of risk and the decisions you make, potential impact and outcomes. How do you think about risk in terms of what we're talking about now?
Yeah, I love the question because I've thought about this a lot, both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
On a personal note, we made a decision a couple of years ago to sell our home and
Mm,
move into an apartment. We made that decision as a family to sell our home and move into an apartment, and that felt like a huge risk.
yeah.
So you almost feel like you're kind of tiptoeing out on the ledge, right? And
Yeah.
then, are you going to jump? And it's the same thing in your career. People talk about seizing the opportunities that are presented to you. It can be very challenging to discern, is that a good opportunity? Is that not?
Mhm.
But you just have to do your best, and you have to, as I've had to, like, was it the right move? I was on a sales path, senior sales manager at one point, and I made a decision to take another path that was an operational role. So I knew that was going to require new skills that I didn't have. There was different leadership. I was leaving my team behind. I'd worked for years to develop and build.
Yeah.
There were a whole host of different factors that I was weighing and considering. And ultimately, I took the leap. The risks that we take, that's where the goodness is.
Mhm.
We want to be thoughtful about the risks, think
Yeah.
about why we're resisting the change. But that's where all the good stuff is. That apartment turned into us buying a home that we absolutely love. And ended up being the best thing we ever did. And we pat ourselves on the back and we did, but that wasn't clear to us.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just funny to me as I think about this, you and I, if you had asked me 30 years ago if I think we would be high risk people, right? I think you and I have both done a lot of things in our lives, taken a lot of big leaps, made a lot of big changes, moves. When I think about our grandparents and our waspy English background and the pragmatism of it, I don't know where that comes from. It's kind of interesting that both of us ended up being willing to put ourselves out there and take some risks.
Yeah, it's a fair point because I'm actually by nature risk averse.
Or
Or,
you
so
think of yourself that
I
way.
think of myself that way. I recognize that when you're taking a risk, there could be downside. Like kind of back to the earlier point that we were making is everything has a downside, right? Most of the big things in your life, the changes that you'll make, there's something to be gained and there's something that you have to give up.
Yeah.
And is that trade-off worth it? It's hard because you don't have all the information when you're making the decision. You don't actually know what life is going to look like, what your career is going to look like after you make that change. So you're kind of operating on faith and you do have to leap.
Yeah.
You don't have all the answers. You have to make a decision. You have to make sure you're making a decision for the right reasons and also recognize that inaction is also a decision.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
just not doing anything is a decision and that has consequences.
When you are stuck, how do you find that clarity or those things that you rely on to figure out systematically, how am I going to approach this? What am I going to do?
It's great when you have a sounding board.
Yeah.
Like, I've had those conversations and you've helped me through a lot of challenges and provided a lot of guidance. We've had a lot of those conversations and that's been really helpful to me. I think one of the best things you can do is to have someone with experience, with insights, right? That will share that. The other thing that has helped get me unstuck is a little business reading, picking up a book,
Yeah.
trying some new things. And then also maybe parents mentioned that physical activity, like keeping trying to do your best to create the conditions for success. And that's like, are you sleeping enough? Are you eating right?
Yeah.
And I know we all struggle with that, myself included. Back on that journey of getting the gym and eating right, but you make it easier for yourself if to the extent that you're able. I mean, we're both
Yeah.
parents. Sometimes there's things that get in the way of the good sleep, but if you can sleep, eat, exercise, those things help you manage the stress of your career. They help give you clarity, right?
Yeah.
There's a number of positive benefits that I won't go into necessarily here, but
Yeah.
those things have been helpful to me. And it's also an area where I've sometimes been inconsistent, right? And I
Yeah.
suffer for it when I am.
Yeah. Well, you learn over time, right? What you need to be healthy and be at your best. So that's great in terms of how you help yourself. Now, when it comes to your team, I imagine that's a whole other challenge. How do you help your team stay focused and find meaning?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I shared with you, the majority of my team, very tenured,
Yeah.
senior folks, self-directed.
Mhm.
I think one of the things about leadership, management that's always been important to me, I don't know that I was necessarily a person that always sought out leadership roles, but I think one of the things that's helpful to me with a team is to focus on what the team needs, right? Like, I'm going to take it from focusing on
Yeah.
yourself, focusing on what the team needs. And that's sort of that servant leadership mindset that I find really useful. Recognizing that your team they have lives of their own. They're going through things, having ups and downs, staying connected with
Mhm.
the team. I've been very diligent about making space for regular one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And I know there's like diverging thoughts on that, right? Some leaders, they don't have any one-on-ones with their team. And that's sort of a philosophy that they have and how they believe that they create efficiency.
Yeah.
But I've always felt like having those touch points with the team in the course of a week is important. Well, my approach is to spend a little bit of time understanding, how they are, how are things at work, where are they getting stuck, what's not progressing,
Yeah.
what are the celebrating the wins that they're having. Again, I've said it a couple of times now, but I've got some great people that I've worked with for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
And so that works really well. It
Yeah.
works well because we're all moving very fast beyond having a touch point. We're all working remotely all over the country, right? So that might be one of the only times we talk that week, unless it's on some kind of a partner or a group
Yeah.
call.
Yeah. And in my experience, I love being on a high performing team. There's nothing like it. You could just get out there and run. But I think in terms of efficiency, I just don't think there's anything like connection and trust that builds efficiency, especially when you have a fast moving team, right? And they know that you've got their back, you're behind them, you're going to catch them if they fall and be there to, help them out, hear their perspective.
Yeah, prioritizing the needs of the team, right? Providing direction, clarity, leadership intent when necessary, and creating space for the team. For me, that's an important part of
Yeah.
how I lead. I need to feel connected with the team. I want to be invested. If someone's in town, if we're going to get together for dinner, right? If at all possible, I'm going to make the trip, make the drive
Yeah.
together, spend that time face to face. We do capitalize, fortunately. We travel around a lot and we end up in places together. And sometimes we've got the entire team together and we're able to do some team dinners and things like that. But I do think that connection is important. And
Yeah.
you're creating a team culture where people care for one another
Yeah.
and have each other's backs. To me, that creates the conditions for a high performing team to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that. What's a lesson you've learned now that you wish you had known 20 years ago?
One of the lessons I've learned fairly early on in my career, and I try to impart when I have newer employees or folks who are more junior, is the importance of self advocacy.
Mm.
That involves just communicating what it is that you want, ensuring that your work is seen. Now, in my role today, it's more about making sure that the team's work is visible,
Yeah.
the team is recognized, that the individuals on the team are recognized for their contributions. And there are times where you have to advocate for yourself. And I think for a lot of us, that's something that maybe doesn't come all that naturally. I know we've talked about this.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and you just sort of toil in silence and expect that people are going to recognize your effort and that you'll be promoted, most of the time it's not enough.
Hmm.
So that's one of those things that I internalized fairly early and, try to make a practice of, although it's not something that comes naturally per se, but you have to, encourage your team too to advocate for themselves. If there's a course they want to take, you got to make a case for it. Like, speak up.
Yeah.
I want those opportunities for you, but I need to hear from you that that's something that's important to you.
No, it's definitely important. I tell people, you don't do it, who's going to? You don't get into those positions where you can promote your team and promote other people if you haven't been able to advocate for yourself and build your reputation.
And it's not always easy to do, right? Because sometimes, I've been really fortunate in my career. I've had some great leaders. I know that's not always the case. Talking to people, not everyone has great leadership or has someone who will sing their praises or recognize their efforts. So I know that's a little more difficult. One of the ways you can stand out is not by doing your job, but by doing more than is asked of you, shouldering more of the load. And I know for a lot of people are reluctant around that. Hey, I do my job and I do it well. But one of the fastest ways to stand out is by doing more than is asked of you. And there's lots of examples of that in my career where people have shouldered more than their share.
Yeah.
And maybe for a period of time, it was a couple of years of doing work that was not on their job description and doing it really well. And that resulted in a promotion or another opportunity for them and open doors. So I don't think we should underestimate the importance of being willing to do more than what's on the job description or what we think we're
Yeah.
supposed to do.
Yeah, the only trap I sometimes see with that is that sometimes people who are extremely reticent to promote themselves think they have to just work harder and harder. I think there is a point where you have to consider, am I working harder because I question my own self-worth and I'm just not sure I'm getting there and burning myself out with no recognition? Or am I doing the right things with the right sort of exposure for it and visibility? There's still that visibility piece that is so important because you can toil in the darkness for years and nobody notices.
Yeah, that's absolutely the right lens on that, right? You have to reflect and assess, is there a payoff here? Is there
Yeah.
potentially a payoff here? Am I toiling at the wrong company? Am I working for
Yeah.
the wrong people? These are all complicated things to sort out. I think you absolutely have the right lens on that.
What advice would you give someone, legacy employee or not, but someone who really wants to step out and innovate and lead boldly?
One of the things that I've always, and particularly now, right, with all of this change is be curious. And I know that
Yeah.
maybe sounds like a simplistic answer, but this is a time in history where there's a lot of things. Those who do best are good learners. They're people who are interested, invested, they're curious. I led a sales team for over a decade, right? I spent a lot of time in sales.
Yeah.
I still consider myself a salesperson. Some of the best salespeople are the curious ones, right? They really want to know, like, what's going on with my customer. They're asking me additional questions to follow up, not just what they're buying, but the why.
Hmm.
If you follow your curiosity and cultivate a healthy curiosity about what you're doing and how things are changing, there's no shortage of things to discover. That's one of the things that's always been super fun about working in technology is that it's always changing. There's always something else to know. I literally have been doing, working at Connection for 25 years. I still wake up every single day and I learn a
Yeah.
bunch of new. And so there's something there's something great about that. And it's a little bit terrifying, right? You're never going to have all the answers. And I'm sure there are some jobs where in like pre-connection, I've had jobs where you could probably figure it all out in 6 months,
Yep.
have all the answers.
Yeah.
Tech is not like that. You're never going to have all the answers. And so you have to kind of pass that fear. One of the biggest fears most people have is just, I'm not going to know the answer. They're going to get on a call with a customer or a partner. They're going to get caught flat footed. Doesn't that terrify everybody?
I had a conversation about that with a client today.
Yeah, it's
Being caught
terrifying
off guard.
and it's humbling. And you may as well just accept that there's no way you're going to have all the answers.
Yeah.
Being candid where it makes sense and saying, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'll look into that. Accessing your resources, knowing where to find the answers.
Yeah.
And we have more resources today than ever. If I want to know something, imagine how much things have changed now. We went from having to go to a library to look things up and then
Yeah.
internet, and we thought we had everything at our fingertips. Well, today, I grab my iPhone and I ask ChatGPT and it tells me anything. Right. I
Yeah.
don't even have to look it up.
Hmm.
I can ask some off the cuff question and it's going to give me an answer that's accurate most of the time.
Yeah.
So knowing where to find those answers, we have a lot of tools. If we can all just try to get past that fear of not having the answers,
Hmm.
Reality is, to your earlier point, none of us have the answers today.
Yeah. I mean, the further you are out there thinking about the future, the less answers you have.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, if you are curious and invested in the work that you do, you're reading, you're talking to people, you're trying to figure things out, you're going to have a lot of answers and you'll
Yeah.
have a lot of value to bring, but nobody's got all the answers. I'm in rooms with some exceptionally smart people,
Mhm.
and even they don't have all the answers.
I think that's great advice. I love that perspective, sort of that framework for how do you stay current? How do you find the answers? Reading, getting new perspectives, keeping yourself out there and knowledgeable. It's really been incredible, Trav, to watch you step into this career, grow throughout the past 25 years, and then step into this new space. It's been fun to be a part of that with you. We've both been doing entrepreneurial type things. So it's been really cool to have your perspective, even as I've grown my own company and AI products. I've really appreciated being a part of that with you. And I think you have a lot of value to offer people. So where can people find you and see more of your work?
Yeah, the feeling's mutual because I've watched your career with infinitely more interest than my own. And so
And
proud of all you've accomplished.
thank you.
Folks can find me on LinkedIn. I'm posting from time to time on LinkedIn some of my thoughts, a lot of things that my team shares. If you have an interest in technology, if you have an interest in artificial intelligence, healthcare, retail, or manufacturing, or industries that you serve or sit within, we've got a lot of podcasts, webinars,
Yeah.
blog posts, all about these changes that are happening today, what's going on in those markets, how AI is changing things. Anyone can please feel free to reach out. Be happy to get you connected to folks within the organization. If you have business needs or sounding board conversations needed, if I can help or connect anyone, then happy to do that.
Yeah. What's the best place to follow the stuff that Connections posting on the future and AI and business?
Yeah, I can share that link with you if you
Yeah,
want to
do
share
that.
with your followers, but we've got the connected blog, cnxnhelix.com as well. That's everything about the Connection Helix Center for Applied AI and Robotics, all of our offerings by vertical market, all of our webinars, podcasts, all of that kind of collateral can be found there.
Very cool. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation and you taking this time. I know how busy you are, so I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
You're welcome.